Now we're going to introduce the concept of the return statement and returning a value from a function, making functions even a little more useful. I'm going to continue with this program of calculating the car rental, which is the one we started with everything in main and split it up to two functions right now, one that displays the menu and one that calculates the rental total. Both of those are void return types, meaning they don't return any data. First, let's just introduce the concept of what the return statement does. Alright, so let's go down and let's just modify this display menu here. Alright, I can just put in a return statement right here, just like that, and all that does, it means once it runs through all these cout statements, it sees this return. At that point, it goes back to main, which is the same concept it was doing already without the return statement. Did all the couts, hit the curly bracket, and then went back to main. The concept here is, though, if I was to put something else here, another cout statement, the famous hello world there, right? What happens now, oops, that should be an endl, there we go, is that this cout statement will never execute. You'll never see it, right? Because it'll go through all the couts here, hit the return statement, and go back to main. The compiler may even give you a warning telling you that certain statements can't be reached, which is what that is talking about. That's hello world statement won't be reached. And you don't see it anywhere on the screen. The menu is displayed, right? The whole entire thing, as we see here, right? And then it just continues. Right, the program ends. Alright, why do we have this exit program in here? Let's get rid of that. Didn't realize that the first time was there. So the return statement ends a function. Okay, there could be lots of code down here, but this will stop it at this point and then never execute the rest of the code after the return statement. So the replacement of the return statement is very important. Right, if I take it out of there and put it down here, right, now we'll see the hello world on the screen. Alright, so the return statement itself simply ends a procedure or function at that point. Alright, and there may be times when you want that. A function may be doing division, and if it detects that it's going to divide by 0, which is illegal, you may want to return at that point. So telling the user, hey, you entered the division will be by 0, that's invalid, and return, so it does no calculations, a way to prevent that divide by 0 error kind of thing, which many textbooks talk about that error. So we're going to take it now, though, and expand on it. We'll take it out of this menu because it doesn't really need anything to return. We're going to modify our program a little, and we're going to start with this calculate rental. Rather than having this do the displaying, like sometimes this does a calculation. You may not want that calculation to be displayed. You may want to use it in a different format of displaying, depending on the user's choice. We do write functions for reusability, so we try to make them as generic as possible. So instead of doing this cout here, I'm going to take that out and let the caller of the function, however it's being used in a certain program, in this case we are just going to display the value. We want the cout to be done in this case here. Alright, and at this point, if I put them in each of these, again we're back to that redundancy of having that cout statement. Currently the way this is written, though, it's kind of hard to get around that. So what we could do is right here after the switch, we can put that if statement in that we talked about one time. If the user's choice is not equal to a 5, then we want to go ahead and do that cout statement. So for everything other than, actually that's not going to be good because the default, then we're going to get this total cost. So that won't work there either. So obviously for right now, we're going to have to put it in each of these case statements. I'm looking at this a little closer, so we'll just place the cout statement there. So now we need total cost. Alright, so this guy down here is calculating total costs. We need to get this calculated value back. It's a double, so we want that to be double now instead of a void. Alright, so now it's going to return a value. So I'm going to change this guy so he matches. Alright, prototype's always got to match its function header, which now it does. So it's going to return a double value. Well, that double value is that variable, and this is where the return statement comes in. So now calculate what that total cost is, and it's going to send that value back to where this function got called from. Alright, so one example of that place is right here. This is where it got called from. So it's going to send back whatever it calculates to this location. Okay, now we need a way to trap that. Alright, how do we get that value and use it here? So in main, we need a variable called total cost, which is a double. Alright, we'll use a different name. We'll just call it rental costs. Alright, just to be different from the rest of it down there. And what we do is, in front of this, we do an assignment. Same of course, change this guy. So again, we're going to call it, pass it the rates. It's going to do its calculation. The return statement down in that function here has that calculated value. It's going to send that value back to where the call is, and this is the call. And then when that value comes back to that location, it does the assignment to rental costs. So rental costs now will have the calculated value, and we can do whatever we want with it. In this case, we're going to do a cout with it. Right? We can use it for other calculations, whatever we're going to do. Right? And we repeat that process through all these, right? So that the value now is displayed within here. I'm only going to change to 1 to save a little bit of time. Right? And we're going to run that. And you'll see if I call it mid-size or anything else, we won't see the total. Alright, another little error. Oh, because I already had the program running. We got to get out of there. Alright. If it tells you can't write to the exe, that means the program's already running somewhere. Alright, so there's our program. I'm going to do a mid-size 2-day rental, and we're not going to see anything except the menu come back. Because Compact's the only one we fixed to work with the way the function is right now. Right, how many days? 2 days, and there's the calculated total formatted, right, and nice and clean. Right, all the other ones work. Right, and what's happening is it is returning the calculated value here, but we're not telling it what to do with it. We're not assigning it to a variable, and we're not outputting it. Right, so that's missing on these 3 here. So we need to do that to clean it up. But again, we want this function now to do a calculation for us and return that value. Since the value is a double, we're dealing with currency, so it has to be a double. Right? We're returning a double. Total cost is a double. We do the calculations, and then we return it. So this return statement is sending back that value to the call location, again, which is this. That's the call location. So this call here gets basically substituted with the value that was calculated when the program is running, and assigns it to rental costs, and then we can do whatever we want with rental cost. Alright, nice and simple. We see that and how it's working. Alright, so now let's expand this program with another function. Alright, let's do another double, and this is going to be calculate insurance. Right, on that vehicle, and what it needs to only know is the type of rental that it is. So a Compact has a different insurance rate, mid-size and everything else has different rates. So what it needs is an integer value for the type of car or vehicle. Right, we'll just call it type. Alright, we're going to have a similar switch structure to this one to determine that value. Alright, so it's going to basically return a value. So we're going to copy this guy, and we're going to chop him up a little bit inside the function. Alright, so we're going to have a function that's a double, and it's going to calculate insurance. There it is, and it has an integer which is the type of vehicle. Alright, and then based on that type, we're going to do this. No longer user choice, it's the type, right? Which in the long run was the user's choice. Right? Needs to know what compact and all those things are. Alright. So it needs to know these items. What you can do, we can copy these for right now, and again another video will clean that up, make it better. Alright, put them in there so it knows what those values are. Alright, so based on the type, we're not going to do any calculations or anything like that, but if the type is a compact, we're going to say, we're going to need another variable here. And we just call it amounts, which is the amount of the insurance. And in this case, we're going to set amount equal to $10.50, let's say. Alright. And we're going to do a similar thing for all these. So we're going to take this line and replace all these calls to calculate, which we don't want to do anymore, obviously. Oops. And we need to change the rates on all those. And at this point, we don't need to exit all the default, so it should be coming in with a valid choice. Alright, so we'll just increase these a little bit. If we got a compact, it's $10.50, $12.50, $14.50, and $20, $20.50. Alright. So we set that variable, we need to send it back now. So, based on the user's this input that comes as a parameter, we decide what vehicle type it is, and we get the dollar amount for the insurance, and we send that amount back. Alright, to again, just like the other one, to where the function gets called. And just going to clean up the formatting there. Alright, I hate the way Studio formats the case statements. They really should be indented to clearly show that. Alright, now that's the proper way of doing it. There's one return statement in the function. A lot of people, what they like to do is do a return statement right here of just the 10.50, right, and not have this statement in there. Oops. Alright. Yep, that works. You would have to do the same thing, return statement here in place of that and in place of that. That all works, right? But that's not a good standard. Right? People don't like seeing the return statements in the middle of code. Right? Return should always be done at the end once the function is done. Right? So I do not want to see these in here. That's pretty bad programming. Alright, it's a bad habit, bad practice. Right? This is the way it is. Set the variable that you want to return, and then return it as the very last statement in the function. Alright. So what are we going to do with that now? So that's going to come back right here. We can call that function, calculate insurance. Right. It needs to know the type, so we're going to pass it that compact, right? That's constant, so it knows which one it is. Right. We're going to need something back in here, so we're going to need another double. Insurance costs. Alright. And we can set equal to that. Alright. Oops. I got a typo somewhere. Alright. So there we go. Clean it up. And we need a semicolon. So I'm calling two functions, getting two calculations. Alright. And we can say right here now, so the total rental cost is now the rental cost, which is how much you're going to pay for the car itself in terms of the number of days and stuff, and then add in the insurance costs for it. Alright, now we got two functions giving us two different values, two different calculations. Right, one's not really calculating, it's just returning a value. Alright, so again, the other three won't do anything, so the compact's the only one. How many days rental? So now the total cost is $49.98. Okay, because it's taken into account the calculation it does here, and then adding in this $10.50 since we had a compact car vehicle. Alright, so we're adding more functionality to the program with more functions and returning more values. We could even take it one more step farther and have a function that takes two parameters and adds these two up for us and returns that value. So I'll quickly place that one in. We're going to need another variable called overall costs. Alright, it's a simple calculations, but as you get more complex calculations, you want to do that. So calculate overall cost. And it's going to need two pieces of data. The rental costs, which we have calculated there, and the insurance cost. Alright, so now we have functions that are providing data, and we're sending that data that they're providing to other functions. Alright, so let's create this guy real quick here. It's a simple function. Alright, and I'm going to make it a very simplified one just to make it quick. Double rent costs and a double of insure costs. Alright. And in this one I'm not going to use any variables. Alright, get rid of that semicolon. Just to show you one other thing you can do with these return statements. Alright, this is doing a simple calculation, a simple formula. So I'm going to say return rent cost plus insure cost. Alright, so it's going to do that addition for us, which we're doing here in the cout statement. We have it going to this overall cost, which we didn't define yet, so let's add that up here. Overall costs. Alright, so then we can simply change this to overall cost, and now we can see the addition again. Nothing's going to change. Alright, it will give us the same results beforehand where it did the calculation of the 49.98. I believe I did not show you this. I did not move it over. Alright, but this is before we did the changes. Right, this had the total cost of the insurance and everything else together. So now I have a function that's doing it, giving us the overall cost, and we're outputting that. Right, if we were to compile this and run it again, you'll get the same results. Another thing you can do, I don't care for it because it overcrowds the statements, but I can take this and place it there instead. And then that returned value, when it comes back to here, will be outputted. So you can eliminate this line if you wish. Yes, it all works. Again, it's one of a style type thing. This is not clean. You're overcrowding a statement. So breaking it up like this into these simple functionalities is the better way of going. It doesn't overcrowd the statements, doesn't make them more complex and harder to read. Alright, that's the proper way of doing it. So you can put functions inside cout statements, and when you return a value, it would output that value. Alright, so again, you see the problem is growing when using functions. Functions are doing calculations for us, taking data in, returning the values, right? And then we're taking those return values and using them in another function. So that's why we took out the cout statement here in the total cost and the rental cost, because okay, we're going to use it and we will output it. Maybe at some point we could, right? But we're also just now really going to use it in another formula, right? In terms of, to calculate the overall cost. So try and make the functions generic and simple to use.